Stay back. Kuma doesn't like humans. It always avoids us.
20 years have passed. Does it still remember me? Kuma, is that you?
The girl returned to the jungle after 20 years. What the gorilla did left the entire research team in tears. 20 years have passed. Does it still remember me? That was the question haunting Dr. Eliza Harrow's mind as she held the old, yellowed photograph, capturing an unforgettable moment from 2005. In a blurry but emotionally charged clip, an orphan baby gorilla named Kuma clung tightly to her. Then just 25 years old, as if she were an entire world. Eliza, an English conservation researcher, had rescued Kuma from poachers in the deep forests of Rwanda. That moment, when Kuma wrapped itself around her with big, round eyes reflecting a mix of fear and trust, was etched into her heart forever. But what happened after that embrace? The scene from years ago ended, and time marched on relentlessly. Now, at 45, Eliza sat in a small room in London, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes resolute yet tinged with sadness. She gently stroked the photograph, reminiscing about the days she nurtured Kuma, when it would snuggle into her lap like a child. Then, the conservation project lost its funding, forcing her to leave, leaving Kuma in the sanctuary with the hope that it would find freedom in the deep forest. On the day of parting, Kuma wailed and banged on the cage, while Eliza sobbed in the jeep, watching through the fence as it grew distant. 20 years later, an unexpected opportunity arose. Eliza received an invitation to join a new research project in Rwanda, the place where she had left a part of her soul. Her heart pounded at the thought of possibly seeing Kuma again. Was it still alive? Would it remember the person who saved it all those years ago? She didn't know that in that forest, there was a leading gorilla named Kuma, an uncanny match to her memory. Could it be the same one? With hope mingled with fear, Eliza decided to return. As the plane took off, she closed her eyes, the image of Kuma embracing her flashing in her mind. 20 years have passed. Does it still remember me? In the vast forest of Rwanda, a young biologist found not only her passion, but also a bond that would forever be etched in her heart. Eliza Harrow, a 25-year-old English biologist, set foot in Rwanda with a desire to protect the wilderness. She brought with her thick books, a few changes of clothes, and a heart full of enthusiasm. But she never expected that amidst the lush green canopy, fate would lead her to a life-changing encounter. Amidst the pain of poaching, a tiny gorilla fought for survival, and in the journey to save it, Eliza discovered the true meaning of her life. Kuma, a baby gorilla less than a year old, was left in despair after his mother was killed by ruthless poachers. When Eliza first saw Kuma, its fur matted with rain, its round eyes wide with panic, she knew she couldn't turn away. With the sanctuary's approval, she became its reluctant foster mother. Eliza spent hours with Kuma, feeding it, comforting it to sleep, and gradually teaching it how to survive in a world that had robbed it of its family. Their bond grew stronger over time. To Kuma, Eliza was not just a savior, but the only family it knew. To Eliza, Kuma was a source of motivation, a light in the long, tiring days in the deep forest. She taught it simple sign language, and one day, Kuma placed its small hand on her chest, signing Mother. In that moment, Eliza's heart seemed to stop, tears streaming down her face. They were not just human and animal. They were part of each other. But that happiness didn't last forever. One day, a fateful letter arrived, cold and cruel, tearing apart their small world. When Kuma turned 6, the conservation project Eliza was part of suddenly lost its funding. She was ordered to return to England immediately. The law didn't allow her to take Kuma with her, and the sanctuary couldn't guarantee its future if she stayed. Eliza wrestled with the decision, sleepless nights watching Kuma play, her heart breaking. How could she leave behind the child she had poured her heart into loving? The day of separation came, and Eliza knelt beside Kuma, tried to explain something it couldn't understand. "Mom has to go, but you'll always be in my heart," she choked out. Kuma, sensing something, hugged her tightly, its strong arms clinging as if never wanting to let go. But she had to leave. As the plane took off, Eliza looked out the window, tears falling endlessly. feeling as if a part of her soul had been left behind in the Rwandan forest with Kuma. Was that the end? Or did fate have another chapter in store for them, where tears would flow again, but this time out of joy? On the day Eliza left, she didn't expect it to be the last time she would see Kuma, or at least that's what she thought. Her heart shattered as she stood before Kuma's cage, trying to say goodbye. But how could she explain to a gorilla that she had to leave, that she had no other choice? Kuma, with its big, intelligent eyes, seemed to sense something was wrong. It clung to her, its small hands gripping her clothes tightly, as if letting go would mean losing her forever. Eliza hugged it tightly, tears rolling down her cheeks, soaking into Kuma's soft fur. "Mom has to go, Kuma," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "But you'll always be in my heart." But Kuma didn't understand. It wailed, its cries of pain echoing throughout the sanctuary, as if begging her not to abandon it. Eliza felt as if someone was tearing her heart apart. She had to use all her strength to pry Kuma's hands away, finger by finger, while it relentlessly pounded on the cage, trying to hold on to her. Each thud was like a knife stabbing into her soul. Finally, with trembling legs, Eliza turned and walked away, not daring to look back, fearing that if she did, she wouldn't be able to leave. The final scene of that day was Eliza sobbing uncontrollably in the Jeep, her hands covering her face, shoulders shaking with grief. Through the fence, Kuma chased after her, its eyes filled with desperation, reaching out as if to touch her one last time. But the distance between them grew, until Kuma was just a small figure amidst the trees. Eliza knew that from that moment on, her life would never be the same. Later, Kuma was released into the deep forest, returning to the wildlife it belonged to. Eliza never heard any news about it again. She returned to England, continued her research, but there was always an emptiness in her heart that nothing could fill. Every night, she dreamed of Kuma, seeing it playing in the forest, but also seeing it lonely, searching for her in vain. She wondered, did Kuma still remember her? Would it forgive her for leaving it behind? 20 years passed, and Eliza had become a renowned biologist, but her longing for Kuma never faded. One day, she received an unexpected invitation. A new research project in Rwanda needed her participation to assess the behavior of gorillas after their reintegration into the wild. Eliza's heart raced as she read the invitation. Rwanda, the place where she had left a part of her soul. Without hesitation, she accepted the invitation, clinging to the faint hope that perhaps, just perhaps, she might find traces of Kuma. What Eliza didn't know was that in that forest, there was a leading gorilla named Kuma. It was an uncanny coincidence. But could it be her Kuma? After 20 years, would it still remember the person who saved it, who loved it like her own child? Eliza didn't dare hope too much. But deep inside, she couldn't stop herself from dreaming of a reunion. When the plane landed in Rwanda, Eliza felt as if time had reversed. The scent of the forest, the chirping of birds, everything was painfully familiar. She took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for what was to come. Was Kuma still there? Would it recognize her? Or was it all just a past buried under the dust of time? The answer lay in Eliza's upcoming journey. A journey not just for research, but to find the part of her heart she had lost. She didn't know that fate was smiling, and a miracle awaited her in the deep forest. In the heart of the Rwandan forest, where dim light filtered to the thick canopy, Eliza stood at the threshold of memory. But would Kuma, now a silverback king, still remember her? Eliza led the research team through narrow paths, the humid air clinging to their skin, the sound of birdsong mingling with the rustling leaves. Suddenly, they stopped. Before them was a clearing in the forest, and there Kuma appeared, a mature silverback, large and majestic. Its silver fur gleamed like a crown, its broad shoulders brimming with strength. Standing tall among the troop, its sharp eyes scanning each unfamiliar figure. 20 years had passed, and Kuma was no longer the small baby gorilla Eliza had cared for. Now, it was a symbol of power and wilderness. But in that cold gaze, was there a flicker of recognition, or just the wariness of a territorial guardian?
Kuma.
Stay back. Kuma doesn't like humans. It always avoids us.
Stay back, a team member whispered, voice thick with worry. Kuma doesn't like humans. It always avoids us. The warnings echoed in Eliza's mind like alarm bells, but her heart told her something different. She had waited too long for this moment. A reunion that could change everything. Ignoring the tense glances from her colleagues, Eliza slowly sat down on the damp ground, resting her hands gently on her knees, tried to appear as harmless as possible. She looked at Kuma, unblinking, as if sending a silent message. The air grew heavy. The research team held their breath, gripping their equipment, ready to retreat if needed. Kuma stood still, head slightly tilted, its eyes studying Eliza. Then, unexpectedly, it took a step toward her. The crunch of dry leaves beneath its feet rang out like the pounding of Eliza's heart in her chest. Tension swelled as Kuma, usually cold and distant, drew closer. Was this a start reconciliation or an inevitable clash? Each step Kuma took felt like a countdown. It was larger than Eliza had pictured, its muscles rippling beneath thick fur, its powerful breath forming faint clouds in the forest air. She could sense its overwhelming strength, but stayed still, not daring to move. "Kuma," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's me." But Kuma didn't respond. It stopped a few meters away, its deep black eyes locked onto hers, as if peering into her very soul. Would there be conflict? Or would Kuma turn away, rejecting the fragile bond from their past? Time seemed to freeze. A team member, unable to bear the strain, accidentally stepped on a dry branch. The sharp crack shattered the silence. Kuma snapped its head around, letting out a soft growl, making the whole team flinch. Eliza's throat went dry, but she held her ground. She knew any misstep could spark violence. But then, something extraordinary happened. Kuma turned back to her, and this time it slowly lowered its head, as if weighing something profound. The tension peaked. Everyone held their breath, awaiting Kuma's next move. Eliza gazed into its eyes, searching for a sign, a flicker of recognition. And then, to everyone's astonishment, Kuma stretched out its massive hand toward her, not an attack, but as an invitation from a distant past. In that moment, time stood still. Two souls, separated by 20 years in an ocean, now faced each other just meters apart. But could memory overcome the barrier of time? The wind swept through the Rwandan forest, carrying the scent of wet earth and the rustle of leaves, as if nature itself whispered an ancient secret. Eliza stood there, her heart racing, eyes fixed on Kuma. The giant gorilla paused a few meters away, its deep black eyes staring into her, as it tried to unravel something long forgotten. The air between them thickened, almost palpable, and those around them held their breath, not daring to disturb this delicate moment. Eliza felt her hands tremble, but she knew this was her only chance. With a slow, deliberate motion, she pulled out the old scarf she'd carried for 20 years. The scarf she'd once wrapped around Kuma when it was a shivering baby, rescued from poachers' hands. Faded and frayed at the edges, it remained a bridge between past and present, between human and wild beast. She held the scarf out, her hands shaking, as if offering a precious gift. "Kuma," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Do you remember this?" Kuma stood motionless, its ears twitching faintly. Then, suddenly it shuddered, a tremor running from head to toe, as if a buried memory stirred within. It let out a soft growl, not menacing but questioning, uncertain. But then, to the amazement of all, Kuma slowly knelt head bowed and reached out its massive hand, gently touching the scarf. The instant Kuma's hand brushed the scarf, Eliza felt a jolt, like electricity surging through her. Tears burst forth, unstoppable. "Kuma," she choked out, "is it really you?"
You remember me. I remember you too, Kuma.
As if an answer, Kuma raised its head, its eyes locking with hers. Then, slowly, it moved closer until it was just an arm's length away. Without hesitation, it leaned forward and rubbed its head against her shoulder, letting out a low, deep rumble, a sound Eliza knew instantly. It was a sound of recognition, of familiar affection, of a child reuniting with its mother after years apart. Eliza wrapped her arms around Kuma's head, feeling its warmth and power, her tears soaking into its thick fur. "You remember me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I remember you too, Kuma." The research team stood in silence, witnessing something beyond science, a bond that defied species, time, and reason. Kuma, the gorilla who'd always kept humans at a distance, now embraced Eliza like a long-lost loved one. But would this reunion last forever? Or was it just a fleeting dream? Forcing Eliza to face the truth that Kuma now belonged to the wild, no longer the baby gorilla she once knew? After that emotional reunion, Eliza could hardly believe it was real. Kuma, now a mature and mighty gorilla, stood before her with those deep, soulful eyes. Suddenly, it let out a gentle growl, like a signal, then turned and began to walk. The gorilla troop started to move, but Kuma paused, raising a hand toward Eliza as if beckoning her. Despite her shock, she stood and followed, leaving the stunned research team behind. Kuma guided Eliza through the troop's territory, a rare privilege unseen in the past decade. She was allowed to watch, even lightly touch the other gorillas, something no researcher had ever done. The young gorillas, with their soft fur and curious, shining eyes, scampered around her. They tugged at her sleeves and nudged her legs, just as Kuma had done as a baby. Eliza smiled through her tears, feeling as though time had rewound, returning her to those joyful days with Kuma when it was a playful, innocent little gorilla. But that reunion couldn't last forever. As the sunset bathed the forest in red, Eliza knew it was time to part. She knelt before Kuma, placing a hand on its face. "Thank you, Kuma," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll always remember you." Kuma gazed at her, its eyes seeming to grasp her words. Then, in a gesture brimming with affection, it spread its arms and pulled her into a tight embrace. She felt the strength and warmth of that hug, as if Kuma, too, didn't want to let go. But after a long moment, Kuma gently released her, stood, and turned to leave. It didn't look back, its towering figure fading into the dense trees. Eliza stood there, watching silently, tears streaming down her face. She knew this was their final meeting, yet her heart swelled with both sorrow and gratitude for this miraculous moment. But was this truly the end? Or did fate, deep within that forest, still hold another encounter for Eliza and Kuma? On the plane back to England, Eliza sat by the window, her eyes sad yet calm. In her hand was an old notebook where she penned her final words. "Love transcends language, species, and time. Kuma never forgot me. I will never forget it." She recalled the moment Kuma recognized her, reaching out to softly touch her face as if saying, "I'm still here, and I still remember." It was an embrace that crossed every boundary, a memory etched forever in her heart. True feelings don't need to share a species to endure. They only need to be real. Genuine affection doesn't fade with time or distance. Kuma, after 20 years, still knew Eliza, proving that animals can love and remember deeply. Let's protect wildlife, for they carry memories and emotions beyond our measure. If this story moved you, please subscribe to the Animal Kisa channel to spread love and conservation. Share your thoughts about Eliza and Kuma in the comments. Thank you for listening. Let true feelings light the way.